Welcome, everyone, to the February 4th, 2025 work session is now called to order. First up today, we have proclamation for Black History Month, and I'd like to invite Taj Smith, President of the Washington County NAACP, and Pastor Les McIntosh from Impact Ministries. He's up to the front here, and also would like to invite Councilwoman Bell, Anderson, and Burnett to join me, please. Okay. Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing the central role of Blacks in U.S. history. Americans have recognized Black History Month annually since 1926, and the theme for Black History Month 2025 is African Americans and Labor, which highlights the role of labor in Black American experience and how it shaped the country's history. And Black History Month is a time for all Americans to reflect and celebrate the contributions that African Americans have made in their struggles for freedom, equality, therefore deepening our understanding of our nation's history. Now, therefore, be it resolved that, with the support of the City Council, I, William McIntyre, Mayor of City of Hagerstown, do hereby proclaim and recognize February as Black History Month and encourage all citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. You guys have anything to say? You guys want to say anything? Anybody?
So I would just like to say, Mayor and City Council, it is an honor to be accepting this proclamation from you guys, especially as we have 3 women who have made our very own Black history in the city of Hagerstown by being elected to City Council at one time. Especially during this time when there's a concentrated effort to roll back years, decades of civil rights progress. This is a testament to what we're doing here in the city of Hagerstown, and I would just like to say and hope that we all continue to make sure that our history is honored and that our voices are heard. So thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wrote a little something. I want to thank the administration, the mayor, the city council, and the rest of the city of Hagerstown for taking this time to acknowledge not just Impact, not just the church, not just the man, but acknowledging Black history as a whole. Even in the midst of the national climate fueled with a propaganda threatening the sanctity and importance of Black history, I applaud the city of Hagerstown. I applaud the roots of those that represent us. Our first councilwoman, Alicia Parson, our first mayor, Madam Mayor Takesha Martinez, and our present councilwomen, Tierra Burnett, Erica Bell, and Caroline Anderson. But as I humbly accept this honor bestowed upon us, I would be remiss to give 2 disclaimers of my operandi as a man and as a pastor. I stand here today as a man that believes in the power of community, and that is what the church is, a community of change, hope, and action. But as a pastor, it's my godly assignment, not my agenda. An agenda is self-serving, while an assignment is instructions that has been imparted by God. And because of my presence and my assignment, it's not that I am a community leader that happens to be a pastor, but I'm a pastor that happens to love the community. And as a pastor, it's not my job to run for office, but rather to stay in my office, to preach, to be a teacher, to encourage, to be a peacemaker, to be a counselor and advisor, to be an influencer, so change so much that those that are in office will be preserved, protected, and promoted to run with integrity and in sincerity. So as I stand, I don't stand alone, because this may be for Impact, but know that when you see me, you see the rest of the pastors as well. When you see me, you see Dr. Darren Mincy. When you see me, you see Bishop Cardwell. When you see me, you see Bishop Williams. When you see me, you see Pastor Reyes. When you see me, you see Bishop Hayden. When you see me, you see all of those pastors, Pastor Smith, and all the churches that are there. So when I'm in place, I'm a representative of all pastors, not just Impact. So as I take this, I say thank you. And on behalf of the other pastors as well, I stand and say thank you as well. Oh, but I would be remiss if I can't say thank you for my Impact family that has allowed me to be the radical pastor that I am. that will stand in the midst of a boycott and still can come back, and y'all still love me. Thank you.
Eric, get a picture. Yep.
Next up, we have the 2025 Farmers Market season. Miss Brittany Arizmendi, please.
Good evening, everyone. So in front of you is a memo. Our staff met with staff from Hub City Brewery a few weeks ago, and they approached us with the idea of moving the farmers market there. So I'm sure most of you know the history of the farmers market. It was there for a very long time, and then was sold to a private investor who's going to have that going every single day of the week. So they have approached us with finding a home for the farmers market, which we've been doing an outdoor seasonal market for the last couple years as a holdover. We would work with their staff we would do the call for vendors, manage that portion of it, and then they have staff there that could help with vendor move-in and managing it the day of. We can work out the details. We just wanted to bring this change before Mayor and Council to get your input.
So this will be separate from the other organizers of the farmers market?
No, we have the city farmers market.
Okay.
It would be the city farmers market. So with the idea that during the colder months, it would be indoors at their facility. And then when it gets warmer, that it would move outside to probably one row of their parking lot, which is actually where we did it 2 summers ago.
Right,
In that
right.
space.
Or when it gets deathly hot,
Yes.
you can move it back inside.
Exactly. So it gives us the flexibility of if it's going to rain, if it's 110 degrees out, because while we got a lot of vendors when we were in that location outdoors, being on the asphalt in middle of summer, it was like we had bakers there, their products were melting. And barely anyone came because it was outdoors. Same with when we moved it to Hatter's Plaza. It was an okay location. But if we have the option to do indoor, outdoor, it just gives us a little more flexibility.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember that discussion back then, and it was a hard sell about being outside. So I'm sure there will be a lot of people okay with having indoors when needed.
I hope so.
So,
And I think we're also looking at the frequency. So in the past 2 years, we only did it once a month because my first year being here, it was every Saturday and there was one vendor and almost no one showed up. So I feel like we have decent vendor turnout now. So the frequency, what we would start out with is twice a month to see if we can build that and we could get vendors to show up twice a month for it.
with the vendors that, will they have access to the electricity and stuff like that inside to where, because I know that was a challenge or one of the questions about vendors that sold food and sometimes the inability to do so outdoors versus indoors. Will they have access to that inside?
I'm not sure. They haven't had access to that the last 2 years when we were outside, which you're right, it was a challenge for some of the food vendors. I think we also would need to have that conversation with Hub City Brewery because they do have a food person inside of their business. So would they allow other food vendors to serve food? That's a question we can get answered from them.
Yes, please, thank you.
So when it's inside, it's just gonna be in that open area, like as soon as you walk into their establishment, it would just kind of be,
I think so, yeah. They would move some tables and chairs, but vendors would need to bring their own table just like they do now. Obviously probably no tents inside, but when it shifts outdoors, they would need to bring their own tent.
In Hub City Brewery, they're fine with the logistics of all this and having it there. Okay.
Yep, we met
Was
with
their
them. They
idea.
actually
Was their
approached
idea.
us about this.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so this wasn't our idea, it was their idea, and it kind of threw us off guard
Yeah.
because what we were planning to do was just to run the farmer's market for 7 weeks adjacent with midweek music and market. So the market part of midweek would have been the farmer's market. But from past events, we've heard not a lot of vendors like to set up there because they have to lug all of their stuff, whereas they can drop it off fairly easily, or if it's in the parking lot, they can set up right in front of their car.
It's a yes for me. Yep.
so yes.
And we can always revisit this. I don't want to set everything in stone because if it's not working and it's not effective for a few months, then I think we'll go back to the drawing board and reconsider, do we shift it to the midweek for summer? So,
And that's one of the best things about the farmer's market is that flexibility of, obviously, if it's not working out, let's fix it, or change locations, or whatever we need to do to make it work, so, yeah. Shout out to them for wanting to,
yes.
to work with us.
So you said there is, are they already have food? They're gonna be serving food? That's
They
why the
have-
vendors may not be able to do it?
So Diego's World is a
I
food truck.
haven't
It's
seen it.
currently outside,
Yes.
but they're just waiting for approval. And then that food truck, they will move their food services inside to their little station that's in there.
Okay.
So we just want to make sure that we're not imposing on what their business is offering.
You know somebody's gonna ask about the breakfast sandwiches.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
and that's why I asked that, because one of the,
Oh, yes.
one of the good things about the market is that you could get breakfast. So that's
Yes.
why I was asking if they're doing breakfast or if they would allow another vendor to do breakfast.
We can ask.
Yeah.
It's a good question. We'll make sure there's some kind of pancake or breakfast sandwich available. Okay,
Anything else?
I think that's it. I think I'm still here.
You're still here.
All right.
I'm
We'll
still
stay here. Next up is the St. Patrick's Day Run Fest, discussion about the change of location and road closures.
Yes.
Brittany again.
Welcome back again to myself. So the host for this, the organizer for this run is Washington County Parks and Recreation, and then they partner with Community Free Clinic. So this is a fundraiser for Community Free Clinic. So they approached us last year with the idea of shifting this race to the north end of town versus doing it in the heart of downtown and then going out towards City Park. Logistically, it's a bit easier doing it on the north end. There won't need to be as many street closures. This is again something that Hub City Brewery wanted to do. They have a parking lot outside, so parking shouldn't be an issue. They have plenty of space inside so that people will be able to do registration. There's room for a few vendors to set up. The city's portion of this is we pay for a band to make it more of a festival atmosphere after the race ends. So the race should end around 11, and then we'll have an Irish band go on stage right after that and play from 11 to 1. And then we're also hoping to pull people to stay downtown. We're trying to work with Bailey to get Irish band in there so that that's kind of the next stop where people will go after the 1 o'clock entertainment ends at Hub City Brewery.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So one of the challenges we've had is just people leaving right after they run. So we're really trying to foster an atmosphere of people staying for several hours and spending their money, not only Hub City Brewery, but all the different restaurants and businesses and shops in the
And
downtown.
there'll be stuff for kids and it's a family, it's a family thing.
Speaking of the businesses, have you reached out to see if they could do some type of specials?
So we reached out, well, we let them know the change at the last Main Street Business Owners meeting.
Okay.
For this one, we haven't reached out specifically for specials, but as a side note, we are working on a loyalty card program that will highlight all of the downtown restaurants and businesses that want to participate for different specials and discounts and deals at their shops. So we can reach out to businesses to promote different specials that are happening. We can certainly do that. And the week before, it's a second Saturday, and we're doing Taste of Downtown. So
That was good last year. Thank you.
everyone's good with the change?
Yep.
Awesome. No, I'm working, so I won't be running. I'll be cheering people on. So I'll sign you up.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Brittany.
Next up, abandoned pools and nuisance vehicles. Old Falk.
Good evening. I got Emily McFarland with us as well. She handles a lot of, well, pretty much all of our abatement stuff Emily handles. So if we want to add some sort of abatement process in here, Emily's the one's got to handle all this type of stuff. So she needs to know how it goes. So this conversation came up, or there's been concerns sometimes when there are vehicles on properties or unused or abandoned pools, and the timeliness to be able to respond to these types of pool situations. To give you some context on it, we issue about 20 notices a year on average. I'm going to take the last 5 years. That's about what we do for pool situations, whether or not they're unpermitted or unmaintained. We do about 165 notices a year for untagged vehicles or abandoned vehicles on properties. Now, the way the current process works is that when we issue a notice, we don't have any authority to abate without the courts. So we have to go in front of a judge, and so we write a citation. If someone fails to comply, then it would take the time period to get in front of a judge, which can be 3 to 4 months. And then once a judgment has been received, the city has to wait an additional 30 days for the person to appeal. If they would appeal that judgment, then we have a circuit court date, and it goes on. So it takes time to go through those processes. And so with pools, just kind of give a little background on that one, that, you know, with pools, we drafted an ordinance or drafted a change to the property maintenance code very similar to how we abate snow situations. It's in the property maintenance code. If someone doesn't shovel a sidewalk, the city can step in after a certain time period and shovel the sidewalk, and we lien the fees against them for the shoveling of those. Fortunately, we haven't had that many of the snow events this year, if you were curious on that one, because we've had the warm temperatures right after it snows. Don't get me wrong, I like snow, but oh man, I always tell people to shovel their sidewalks and always be a challenging part there. We end up shoveling more ourselves as staff than we do actually having our abatement contractor do it, because we come across, unfortunately, situations that people are not able to. But with pools, we made changes to the code that would basically say that if a pool was not used for 30 days, then they would have to try to figure out a way to make it safe as far as maintaining it or putting a safety cover over it, which there's ratings for safety covers with the agency that oversees it, ASME, that oversees those, that has a standard rating for safety covers over pools. If the pool has been unused for that period of time and it's been declared a nuisance pool, then it would be that the city could abate the pool and remove the pool from the property, whether or not it's above ground or in-ground pool. And then an abandoned pool would be one that I'm sorry, a nuisance pool is where we would drain it. An abandoned pool would be one that we would actually abate the property. Abandoned would mean that it would not be used for 2 consecutive summer seasons. Now, I know I just said, oh, we want to try to make it timely, where we go to the front of the courts, and it's usually, 3 to 5 months at times before we get in front of a judge to get that judgment. You have to understand, a lot of times we give people a lot of opportunity to comply. It is not something that we just issue a notice and we just go and find someone. We issue very few notices because we want to try to see compliance before someone actually gets to the fine point. So sometimes it can be multiple seasons. So with an abandoned pool, we were saying that it would have to go through 2 consecutive summer seasons with not being used. And then once it wouldn't be used for those 2 consecutive seasons, we would declare it as abandoned, and then we would abate the pool from the property. Something to note though, like I put in the memo, that pools themselves, in-ground pools, they can add value to your property. Above ground pools, based on real estate market research, they add no value. For if anyone that has an above ground pool and you're thinking that, whether or not you're a listener or here thinking about growing up or whatever, you're like, oh man, that pool I've spent, several thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of dollars on above ground didn't add any value to my property. Unfortunately, by market research, it does not. Now, in-ground pools, they say adds about 5 to 8% to the property value. So there is some value to an in-ground pool, which for your all's knowledge, that the approximate median income value of a home right now in Hagerstown is $195,000 based on current real estate. So if we were to move an in-ground pool, that would devalue a property between $9,000 to $15,000. So it does have an impact over removing an in-ground pool. I will say the majority of the pools that we have issues with are above ground pools. In-ground pools, we don't have as much issues with them. They are pretty much maintained. I won't say we don't have any issues. We've had those drained as well for that situation, that they're not being maintained and we order them to be drained. But an in-ground pool being drained or an above ground, you do have rainwater and the other things that can refill that area. Honestly, we can't always see that we're looking from public ways. We always have to look from a public way. We can't walk on a property unless the owner gives us permission to do that. So we have to look either from the public way or a neighboring property. Can't always tell in an in-ground pool what I could see from that. Above ground is usually a little bit easier to see.
Does it include like the kiddie pools? Because I think we had that at the planning commission brought to us last year, I think, or was it 23, I think. So.
Correct. There are some things with kiddie pools. Kiddie pools, so pools are anything that holds 24 inches of water or more. So a kiddie pool generally is classified as not a swimming pool with that. Now, the pools that you can buy at Walmart that you see when the summer season starts getting and they're sitting in the middle and they sell them for a couple $100, it does include those. They're called storable pools that people could erect on their property. It does require a permit to do that. There is a review through that process. A lot of times that is where most of our notices are going, to remind people you need to get a permit for that, because they need to make sure they're not underneath power lines, they're not over top of any utility lines, they're not violating setback requirements, also the fencing requirements with pools, because drowning is a serious situation with pool situations if they're not properly fenced or in a secure location. So those are pools, and to kind of give you a little bit more there. So we also added vehicles to this as far as nuisance abandoned vehicles. Now, we'll go back up, I'm sorry, for the pools there. Pools, I could only find in the state of Maryland that didn't. Maryland was the only location that had a pool abatement program. I did not find any other ones, but it does exist in the state. I found ones in New Jersey, Illinois, and Indiana. It was not a very common code to find, but there were ones that do exist. For as far as abandoned vehicles or nuisance vehicles, there are several ordinances within the state that exist. Some of the examples are in Allegheny County, then Cumberland has one themselves, Salisbury, Worcester, Snow Hill, then DC and Virginia. Actually, we had an inspector several years ago with us that worked in this state of Virginia. And he said, I'm surprised how many mowing of lawns that you all do. He says, we tow vehicles all the time in Virginia. That was more common than mowing lawns. That being that we don't have an ordinance that addresses abandoned vehicles without going through the court system. So, we worked with the attorneys on this as well to draft a separate independent nuisance ordinance for vehicles. Basically, the process would be that if a vehicle didn't have consent were on a property owner's property to sit there for 48 hours, it would be considered an abandoned vehicle. It was either inoperable or untagged for 30 days, or if it was wrecked, dismantled, or inoperable on the property. Those would be ones that would be classified as an abandoned nuisance vehicle. Inoperable, though, what does inoperable mean? So one of those is that it doesn't pass Maryland inspection. It wouldn't pass the Maryland inspection, that makes it inoperable. You can't drive it on Maryland roads if it doesn't pass Maryland inspections. And then also that it's been 30 days of disassembled, has no engine, that missing other essential parts. It has, just basically pulled apart. You can just tell. Those are ones that are not able to drive on the road. So what would that process look like? So if it was an immediate hazard, that we wouldn't issue any notice. We would just tow it from the property because it's an imminent danger to the neighborhood. So we would just tow that one away. And all of my time here on one of those, because we do have a code right now where you can do it, it's an imminent danger. We only done that once, pull it off the property because it was set on fire on a property. So we removed it. Now, for other ones, it would be 30 days to correct the notice, to have the vehicle that they need to make it operable or put it inside of an enclosure. So we're not saying that people cannot have an inoperable vehicle. They can have them. They just can't store them where other people and neighbors can see them. They can be stored in a garage, not underneath a tarp. It has to be inside of an enclosure, but it's something that's stored in a location that people can work on it. We would get those calls over the years that, I bought this for my son or daughter and we're going to work on it together to get it operable. Okay, we understand, we try to, respect those types of things, but we're getting more and more of these vehicles around town. If people didn't comply with those orders for 30 days, then we would take the vehicle into custody. Now, what does that mean? The city's not going to be a towing service. We have a towing companies that the police department use that we would utilize as well. When we have a court order, that's what we do, but we would utilize them for that purpose. Then once it's in the custody, that the towing company would find who the owner of the person was. They send them a letter, send them all certified. They have certain regulations they have to follow. It's outlined in the ordinance here that they would have to list the different things, find all the title holders for the actual vehicle, make them aware that this is in their custody because it has been towed by the city of Hagerstown. Then the owner of the vehicle could, come and redeem that vehicle at any given time. But the city does have the authority after a certain set time period that if a vehicle is not claimed, then the city can sell the vehicle then, and the expenses for the storing of it, the research and everything else would then go to the city. Any proceeds from that sale would then go back to the general fund. So that would mean let's say that if a vehicle was sold for $1,000 and it cost the city $800 during that time period to hold it, $200 would go back in the general fund. Now, if it costs the city sold it for $1,000 and it costs us $1,200 for all that storage at that time period, there would be a $200 bill that would be sent to the property owner for that service. As always, the person could redeem a vehicle at any given time up to the point of sale. So it's not just at that time period once it's towed and it's limited time period, they could redeem it right up to the time it was sold. But we will allow that by the ordinance, because it's all in other jurisdictions, that they do permit where if you could ask for a permit to extend that time period. So let's say you were someone, you're like, man, this thing has no engine, the engine died, it's just sitting there, and I don't have a garage on my property. Could I just keep it a little bit longer than the 30 days? So for a fee that a lot of jurisdictions offer that for $75, you can keep it for another 6 months on the property in its current place without putting it inside of a closure and while you're working on it. And that would just give you an extension for that 6 months. Then after that 6 month time period, then the city would pursue any type of towing. It's only one extension for a 5-year time period for one vehicle. We have several vehicles that fall into this category. And the one thing to remember as we talk to you later in this month about no bid tax sale properties, we have properties that are the ones as part of your strategic plan to address these types of properties that owners have passed away. The family doesn't claim the property. We have vehicles that are sitting on these properties that are just sitting there. I mean, one of them alone has 5 vehicles on it right now that I know of. It's just sitting there. No one's going to claim those properties. It turns into nefarious activities. We have another one that was abandoned on a vacant property that people are just utilizing for the place to transfer drugs. So these things happen, and then we have these vehicles. I cannot take a dead person to court. I'm not allowed to find someone that's dead. So now that vehicle just sits there. It just continues to be a nuisance in that neighborhood. So those are the quick overviews of those ordinances. I'm open to any discussions. If we want to move forward with certain ones, revise certain things, just let us know. Emily and I are here, and Emily can answer any questions on that. So I'd let you all know as far as like nuisance declares, like does the city code already declare certain nuisances? We already do. I mentioned snow and ice before, that's a nuisance condition. Also weeds, trash, and debris. So if you have weeds over 10 inches or you have accumulations of trash and debris or rubbish on your property, those are nuisances. We also have declared sea containers as a nuisance. I know this has been one before Councilman Barashar brought up for revisiting, and it's something we certainly can do, but we declare sea containers as a nuisance and they're not allowed in town. Now, you're all probably sitting here going, oh, no, at certain locations in there, we chase them all the time. But that's a separate discussion for another day. And then also we declare nuisances. We have a nuisance abandoned properties that we have an ordinance on that one. It's only been utilized one time in my time here with the city that we've used to demolish abandoned property. But we do have different other ordinances that can declare things as a nuisance. So this isn't anything new. But here, like we said, we're here to answer any questions or suggestions, changes.
I think for me, for the pools, it's pretty simple. So I've probably gotten maybe 5 calls over, the last recent number of years of folks that are simply and plainly upset with the pool that exists on an adjacent property owner's property where the pool is not in use and has water in it. And obviously it's during the summertime condition. And I would just say, like, the last thing somebody wants to do, for the enjoyment of the rear yard of their property is go out and have the smell, the bugs, the things like that. And so all I'm trying to do is find a course where it doesn't take us 9 months to get to the point where we get to compel that adjoining property owner to, secure that item, meaning empty the pool, and make sure that it remains in at least, proper condition while it's not in use. And I agree. I think that the sale of temporary pools have sort of, exacerbated that to some degree. But it was interesting because the last call that I had received a couple months back was obviously an in-ground pool. It's not in use. There doesn't appear to be any indication that it's going to become in use at any point in the near future. And so I wouldn't want to be that neighbor that's subject to, well, it may get addressed, but that's going to be in like October, you know what I mean? When the duration of the period of most impact is done. So my hope is just that we adopt whatever we can adopt to compel somebody to address it in a more immediate time frame so that it doesn't impact the adjoining property owner, the entirety of their summer. So that's my 2 cents on the pools. On the abandoned vehicles, I think that what you have is certainly good. I'll use an example in my own neighborhood where, I have a property in my neighborhood where I think there are 5 vehicles on the property. That individual is not deceased. That individual still owns the property, but they are not returning to the property anytime soon. And so then that begs the question, how do you address those? Because those instances, you don't know when that time frame is. So I do like the fact that the city's able to sort of pull the vehicle, place it in holding, and sort of deal with it that sort of third party, separate way.
And to go on with the vehicles, I've had several conversations with the Student Trades Foundation that does do vehicles as well. They would be interested in being a party to actually have the students at the Tech High to work on the vehicles to make them operable to then resell through Tech High and doing it that way. So I've had those conversations with them.
Yeah, I think people just want our actions to be more timely in these instances. Like, I think that's just the basic bottom line. They, because like I said, we get folks that email us and we go, okay, staff is definitely working on it, but then there's no way for them to see the steps that are happening behind the scenes and the duration it requires to get from point A to point Z. And folks just, they want to look out the back door and go, okay, there's 3 cars I see that have been sitting in there for 3.5 years. They're gone. All right, not 9 months later go, man, I can't wait till they move those cars. Or, look out and just see the pool continually sort of, collapse in on itself and turn green and be like, okay, I said something. And I think they do want it sort of like snow removal and grass and weeds and, noxious things.
To go with your comments there, and Emily can attest to, because she takes a lot of those calls with the abatement stuff there, that when we move trash, debris, or mow a lawn, that they're always thankful because it's within a week. So you see it, you report it at our office within a week, that thing's fixed. But like you mentioned, as far as other examples, such as the pools and the vehicles, it takes such a long time period that Emily will tell people like, well, we've already issued a notice on it. We're waiting on a court date, and that's not what they want to hear. And then when it's gone, they say, oh, finally the city did something. And it's like, well, no, we've been doing stuff for several months. It wasn't that we didn't just finally do something. We finally got the court order to do it.
When we explain timelines to people and the process that we have to go through, it almost creates more frustration than anything, because they just simply don't understand that getting it to court, getting it before a judge, getting a judgment, and then being able to do something, it can take up to 6 months, and that's a long time.
But you do communicate during the process or not?
Yes, of course. If we get calls or complaints or somebody wants an update, we'll give those updates. We'll check in with the inspector, see where they are with things. And I handle all the citations as well, so I can see when the court dates are coming, and I file all the paperwork at the courthouse.
Roughly how long, mentioning court dates, like how long does that usually take?
Usually once the paperwork is filed with the court, it's 3 to 4 months out before it'll go before a judge.
I worked out with our former city attorney, now Judge Boyer, that whenever district court would get a third judge, that we could get a code day at least once a month so that we could try to speed up the process. Judge Boyer did say, they agreed to that at that time. Now, of course, he was our city attorney at that time, and you know how much time has elapsed, and they've been talking about that third judge at district court for quite some time. So I don't know when that day would come, but they can't do it until they get a third judge to have just a code day once a month. Because right now, for your knowledge on court dates, that inspectors will issue citations and they get randomly chosen. So the court just assigns them whenever they are. They're not seeing, that's someone from the city, then we'll go ahead and do that. They might have 2 in the morning on one day, 1 in the afternoon, another one 2 days later. They don't pile everything in. So then they're at court for those days for half a day or a full day, just going through the court process. Just the same as our police officers, unfortunately. You don't have that prioritization on scheduling.
That's helpful to know. I mean, for everyone to know, even listening, that it is a process. And
It is
takes
a
time,
process.
so.
Yes, and we all keep good records and calendars and dates to know when to file things. So it's not like we're holding on to anything. If something needs to go to court, it gets to court as soon as it possibly can.
I think that the point you made earlier is also very good for the listening public to understand. Because I will tell you that other jurisdictions may not operate as technically on that position of not going onto the property to identify the issue at hand. And so for folks that do have concerns, that do call in, there are, tons of properties in the city that don't have alleys or easy access to the rear areas where these occurrences happen. So if you happen to be one of those people, I think it's important what you said, getting onto your property to see the concern that you have with your neighbor is a critical part of code enforcement, being able to adequately see what they need to see to take the necessary enforcement actions that you need to take. So I know that people often hesitate to be like, oh, well, I'm going to call in and, but I'm not going to tell you who I am and I'm not going to tell you where I'm at. I'm just going to tell you this property. But then you guys go out and you're like, well, I can see something from the sidewalk that Ms. Smith called about. Ms. Smith, you got to let code enforcement know so they can go in your backyard and look over the fence to see the issue that you have, with that item in the yard in order to get as accurate a depiction of what's being talked about as possible.
And we get both of those types of phone calls where we have people who want to remain anonymous, but we also have people who are kind of at their wits' end and they're like, absolutely, come on over. We'll show you what you need to see. So we get both of those types of calls.
And to go on with yours, Councilmember, it's cartilage is what is usually referred to in a legal sense of what you can see from the public right of way. And we cannot use ladders to look over a fence. That sometimes is a common thing too, that no, we have that. Now we do have one inspector that is tall that can look over a 6-foot high fence without a ladder, and that's perfectly legal. But we can't run them all around the city to look over 6-foot high fences. But there are challenges with always identifying things. And Councilmember Burnett, you were mentioning, communicating back to the people. Unfortunately, our current software system doesn't do a great job for people to look it up themselves online. The new system will be an improvement for people to look things up. As Emily mentioned, we do respond if people do reach out to us to give them an update, but unfortunately, we don't provide updates for every case that we receive a concern on. So that can lead to frustrations. It's just time management. We just don't have the ability to reach back out. And as Emily said, sometimes they're just anonymous as well. So they're not providing us with phone numbers or emails to communicate back to them. It's only for inspection requests when we're going inside properties that they actually give us that contact. If someone complains about their neighbor next door that has high weeds or junk in their backyard, they just give them an address and then they just say junk in the backyard and then we just go and take a look. But we do try to keep that anonymous. Other jurisdictions, as Councilmember Ashar alluded to, actually, report the information of who the person is that complained to that to the individual that had the property. Like, hey, it was your neighbor that called. And that leads to just neighborhood wars, and we don't want that. We just are trying to say, and the inspectors are trained to say, I received an email, because everything goes through email requests, that I received an email, and I'm here. This is why I'm out at your property. I got an email.
And speaking of the new system that we just approved last month, right? Okay. For like reporting nuances or issues, could they go into that new portal, or would you rather people still call to report those instances?
I don't know for sure. We saw the aspect of things for doing inspections in the field and giving more timely answers to, like, for permit inspections or for rental inspections, more timely on that. I do not recall how like a CRM module was done. But right now people have the ability to do things online or calling into the office. They do have that. I mean, Emily coordinates most of the rental inspections that we do, and the people communicating, I think, mostly through email with you,
Mostly
right?
through
Yeah.
email. Mhm. Yes.
So most of the big property management companies has our contact stuff. that
Let's
they
see,
just reach out.
ask that whenever the development stage comes. If you,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that as you saw the agenda, we're first quarter 26 for code and permits, so that we got a little bit of
a
time.
little bit of time.
Any other comments from what was in front of you all?
Would this also apply to like communities with HOA?
Yes, HOAs don't have any like exemption from local ordinances.
Okay, so if there's like a quote abandoned vehicle in an HOA neighborhood, they should call the HOA first or the city?
So let's take your HOA, for example.
That's why I'm asking.
Yes, so in your community, there are lots that were created that people would be able to use cars. And I'll be honest, we do have a lot of issues with abandoned vehicles in those locations. And those lands are owned by the HOA. So we work closely with HOAs to let them know that, you are the ultimate responsible ones, and that's how they usually get removed, is towing them away through the HOA themselves. So generally, the HOAs take care of it. They're
Thank you.
Any other comments on that? I mean, if, the only clarity that I would have is that the Councilmember Alshire's point is that with abandoned pools, we were saying it would go 2 consecutive summer seasons. Now, we can address maintaining pools with them getting them, cleaned up and maintained and that type of stuff. But if it's unused for 2 seasons, then we would remove them, and that would be an abandoned stuff. Now, we can still drain them, we can still do all that type of stuff, but it would give them the opportunity to not devalue their home for 2 years before they would do that. Are we good with that?
I think that's
time
fair.
period? Okay. And so if you all go with that, then we'll have stuff then at their regular session for introduction.
I'm good.
Sounds good.
That's it? All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, city administrator.
All right, Mayor, a couple things. Reminder that the Governor's State of the State address is tomorrow at noon. There's going to be some information on some additional budget cuts and other pertinent information as far as state funding go, from what I understand. So maybe a good thing to watch that tomorrow. Also, Delegate Schindler has dropped 2 of the council-sponsored bills from the last administration. One of those is enabling legislation for body cameras on enforcement personnel. That would include code enforcement and parking enforcement staff. It doesn't mandate it. It's just if you want to outfit your enforcement staff with body cams, and that you would be able to do it. The other one has to do with annexation and related to when lands are annexed. And the zoning is substantially different between the city and the county. Right now, it has to go through a process called express approval, which means that the county commissioners have to approve it before that zoning can be reclassed. This would go back to the way the laws originally were back in 2008, 2009. That as long as it's substantially the same in the land use codes for the city and the county, then that zoning would be allowed. As far as co-sponsors, Delegate Schindler has several co-sponsors on the body cam, which is good, and he has a couple, I believe, on the annexation. We talk MML about that tomorrow, and I think he'll get a supportive stance from MML. So hopefully those 2 will look good. State of the County today was held out at the new Meritus Medical School. Man, what a nice place that is out there. Also, they cooked their own food, and the food was really good for their first time doing it. It's the first time they've hosted an event out there, and it was really good. So I thought it was a good job done by the county out there today. Fieldhouse opened a soft opening on Saturday. And I wouldn't have called it a soft opening because they had probably well over 1,000 people through there between jujitsu, lacrosse, and a big AAU basketball tournament was going on in there. And I was there for several hours. Minor snafus, but I don't know how it could have gone any better for a first day. And I just commend the general manager. I commend the staff. The staff did not get frazzled when little goofy things happened, point of sale hosed up, or the scoreboard glitched, or something like that. No one got frantic about it. They took care of it, and I was amazed, just amazed at it. So congratulations to them, and what an amenity. The grand opening will be February 18th at 1 o'clock also, so put that on the calendar. The 32 North operations for customer service are going very well. The drive-through is not yet opened. It should be open here within the next week or 2. That's now allowing us to demo the first floor where the lobby used to be. What's going to be located there is going to be a commission meeting space to where they don't have to come up here and have their meetings. It'll be maintained on the first floor. Plenty big for planning commission, board of zoning appeals, all of that. Eric Hastings TV studio will be rebuilt on the right side of the lobby. And we're going to expand that to where it has some additional functionality to potentially do some live broadcasting out of there, which will be very nice. So we're looking forward to that getting done. Last thing I would say is that there's already some bad weather announcements being put out for tomorrow night and Thursday. I would stay tuned to social media and the City of Hagerstown Municipal Facebook page to see if there's any delays in trash pickup or any other potential closings that may result from it being icy. Ice is so much worse to deal with than snow. And we're supposed to get significant ice tomorrow. So just everybody be careful out there and stay tuned as to trash and any other closings that might happen. That's it for me.
Councilwoman Anderson.
I just wanted to give another congratulations and thank you for coming out to Taj and the double NACP, and as well as Pastor Mac with Impact Ministries. It was great celebrating both of you guys today. I love that you guys came out with a lot of support. That's good to see in the community. Another congratulations to, we welcomed, Honey Baked Ham over the weekend that came in. So did the Hub City Live Brewery. Am I saying that right? Yes?
Hub City
Okay.
Brewery, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So welcome everyone to Hagerstown. Other notes that I have is for everyone in the city to just kind of sit back and take a look at what the south end of the community is doing. They've just been received, they just received the enough grant, they were awarded with the Enough Grant Program, I'm sorry. And they are great examples, and as far as the amount of work and time that they took to really stick through together as, community members and partners to show that, things do take time. And as long as you guys continue to push and have the same focus, we can look to a brighter future for all of Hagerstown. So just take the time to actually use them as a model and as a guide. And I think that's about all the remarks I have for today. Thank you.
Councilman Flaherty.
I wanted to say thanks for city staff for taking care of our residents' concern last week near Bester. My neighbor contacted me a day or two ago, and she's very concerned. She has a great amenity on her street called the Blurb Box, and somebody stole all the books there. And I have them on camera, and hopefully we'll catch that couple that stole them, because I've seen them around town before. But it's very sad that we have something very nice on my street where kids can go and get books, and someone just takes them all. So, and there was also another shooting down the street on Dewey this morning. I heard nobody was injured, but public safety is going to have to be continuously pursued all the time. But it's sad that we have so many good things going for us, and we have setbacks sometimes like that. So,
Councilwoman Burnett.
Can you go to her first? There's a reason.
Councilwoman Bennett.
There's a reason.
Happy Black History Month to everyone. I wanted to give a shout out first to my grandmother. So if you go down the culture trail close to the baseball field, big picture of her. She's a gorgeous woman. I hate to see when the pictures come down, but every time I walk by, I look at her, take a picture of her. So I had posted a post the other day with a newspaper clipping from 1968 where she was protesting, her and a group of her friends, the George Wallace coming to Hagerstown. So it was a big deal back then, but when you look at the article under it, it's like local Negroes protest Wallace. So I was able to research it, and I read some of it, and it's just it was so heartbreaking to hear how they described it, even. So under the post, someone said, I think it was Tyree, he said, man, that was only 57 years ago. So 57 years ago, we were still protesting the rights that we are still kind of struggling with today. So it was 1968, 57 years ago, and sometimes you think like, dang, I know people that's 60, and it just doesn't seem that long. So since it was so close to the baseball field, I said, you know what? I wanted to just read you guys just something that I printed off. So Early 1950s, during a time when segregation was still prevalent, Hagerstown Harmon Hotel on Jonathan Street served as a vital refuge for African-American travelers. Built by Walter Harmon, a prominent Black entrepreneur who owned 40 properties in the area, the hotel was the only establishment in Hagerstown that welcomed Black guests during this era. In that same year, the legendary baseball player Willie Mays, then 19 years old, a rookie, lodged at the hotel because that's the only place where he could get lodging. That reflection on this history reminds us the importance of equal treatment for all. So it's funny because it's like someone can, and it kind of related me back to DEI. It's like someone can have that much talent and still be set back, still not have the same equal rights as everyone else. So I just, my grandmother being that close to the baseball field, I thought of, wow, like, Hagerstown has some really truly rich history that I want to just make sure that we keep highlighting through the month. So every Tuesday for the month of February and maybe March too. I'm going to I'm going to mention someone from our Black History Month.
Councilman Alshire.
I have nothing this evening.
Councilwoman Burnett.
So that's why I wanted Councilwoman Bell to start, because she shared that idea with me and Councilwoman Anderson, I'm about to call you Caroline, about the highlighting Black history every Tuesday. So thank you for that great idea. I also have remarks for that. But first, I want to give a congratulations again to Hub City Brewery for the grand opening. I came back in the evening around 8-ish, and it was packed. I'm there pretty often. I've never seen it that many people. It was great to see the parking lot full of cars. So kudos to them. As far as Black history, I want to piggyback off the Pastor Max and Taj Smith's remarks about Black history and the city continuing to celebrate Black History Month. So thank the city for that recognition, because at a time, as was mentioned, cultural celebrations or remembrance is being pulled back from certain states and the White House. So I'm thankful that we're still at a city level able to celebrate Black history. And speaking of Black history, again, thank you, Councilman, for that great idea. I would like to share my grandmother, Thelma Bunkie Burnett, also known as Nan. She was a significant figure in Hagerstown, particularly in Jonathan Street community, where she owned and operated the Thelma's Confectionery for more than 20 years. Her store was more than just a business. It was a vital gathering place for locals in the prominently Black neighborhood. Situated on Jonathan Street, a historic area with deep cultural and historical roots, her convenience store became a cornerstone of community life. As a businesswoman, Bunkie was deeply committed to the people around her. She would often extend credit to struggling families and made sure no one in her community went without essentials. Her kindness and generosity earned her the love and respect of the neighborhood. She became a trusted figure, known for her compassion and dedication to helping those in need. Even after her passing, the memory of Bunkie and her store remains a powerful symbol of community spirit and resilience in Hagerstown. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback off you guys too, as well as welcome the new businesses to the community. Add one more is Good Libations.
Oh, yes.
That's a pretty cool, unique store as well downtown. We want to thank them for our investment in the community. Also, I want to extend congratulations to our newest police officer that was sworn in, was Officer Wetzel. And I thank him for his service too. And that's it for me. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Second. Any discussion on any agenda items tonight? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Hello and welcome to Council Wrap. I'm Wes Decker, and I'm pleased to be joined by first-term council member Sean Flaherty. Welcome to this segment for the first time. I don't know, personally, I don't know a whole lot about you. Certainly followed some of the bio information that came out during the election. But tell me and everybody listening and watching what you want them to know about you now that you are a council member.
Yeah, so I've lived in Hagerstown. This June will be exactly 4 years. I lived here years ago as a kid. I went to South High for 1 year. I moved back to the area because I have a lot of family here. And, you know, I worked at the Pentagon for several years. I lived in Alexandria, so the real estate's a lot cheaper here, you know, and plus, you know, there's a lot of great amenities. What I like about Washington County is that we're close to DC, but we're not paying DC prices. So I got really involved with Neighborhoods First the last few years. I ran the Dewey Central Neighborhoods First North End group for a long time. So public safety was a big thing on that, and that was my main campaign for council. Public safety, economic development, luring more businesses here, and I think we got to do a better job of getting some higher paid jobs here, not just warehouse and other industries. But, you know, I got involved at a young age. I worked on a lot of political campaigns. I was a political science major from the University of South Carolina. I worked for the former governor of South Carolina. I worked for both our senators. So I was an intern on Capitol Hill. So I did legislative affairs at the Pentagon. I work for the Air Force, but I work from home. So I do a lot of our accounting product services to the Air Force and Space Force. So I do a lot of that and deploy that and make sure that the government has everything they need. So I'll visit different, you know, Air Force bases and stuff like that. But, you know, I think I was, you know, I worked in legislative, I've done it all just about.
Yeah.
Like I never imagined moving to Hagerstown, I would run for anything, much less city council. But, you know, I knocked on over 10,000 houses this past campaign.
Wow.
So we hit quite a bit of residents, North End, South End, downtown, and just hearing their concerns. You know, I think we've got to do a better job of just taking our message back to the residents here, because not all of them tune into a, you know, a 1 week, you know, week meeting all the time. And,
Sure.
you know, hearing a lot of their consistent concerns here with a lot of issues going on, but what we can do to make that better. Like a lot of things are out of the city's hands, it's state and federal, but,
Yeah.
you know, we have to do things better on our end here. So, and I hope that this term coming up, we can focus on a lot of those issues. We got a lot of great things coming, like, you know, we've got a lot of businesses coming downtown. We've got the field house opening up shortly, but, you know, we got a ways to go. But I feel like I have a lot of hope in our residents and, you know, bring positive, you know, because we can always look at, you know, social media and look at negative, but we have to say, you know what, there's stuff we can do in our own community to
Yeah.
make things better. And a lot of folks I did see complaining on social media just didn't bother to show up to a Neighborhoods First meeting where we did actually address those issues. But,
Yeah.
you know, there are keyboard warriors out there. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, how frustrating do you find that? And I asked that question even based on
Yeah.
something you said in the council meeting earlier. You know, all those positive things we do, and then one negative thing happens, and it's not just one step back. It seems like it's 17 steps back.
Yeah. And like I said, these issues we've had some of these issues long before, I mean, they've been ongoing, but I just don't want to make them worse because I think we can. I mean, this past election nationwide, people did elect for certain mayors and city councils to go, and they wanted a new leadership to clean up the streets. Like California, you have the homelessness there, and Gavin Newsom had an executive order to telling the local new municipalities, listen, you guys got to do your job. You
Right.
got to clean up. And we've got to do that too. We have residents that live in here, they pay taxes, you know, they expect certain city services that, you know, and they expect protection and things like that. And I tell folks, we just need to get back to the basics of governing, you know, making their quality of life better. And that's what I'm going to continuously do when I'm on the city council. But I've always told folks you can do a lot in your community. You don't have to be a council member or have that title, you know, show up to a neighborhood meeting. And, you know, if we got half the amount of people that complained online to actually do that, maybe we could see some progress in some things. But, you know, I'm also very sensitive to the concerns of the residents here and making sure they're heard, you know, that we don't ignore things that are, you know, need to be improved upon here. So,
How do you characterize what I guess I would call the evolution of Hagerstown from when you were here previously to when you came back 4 years ago and where we are now and the momentum I think that we have going forward.
Yeah, I think that, if anything, a lot of Hagerstown has not changed, which I like that because I've lived in areas where there's extreme explosive growth, where, South Carolina, Northern Virginia, where you look at certain areas you can't recognize anymore.
Yeah.
For the most part, I can still recognize Hagerstown. I can still come to downtown, the Royal Rogers, I can still see that's still there by the police station. So a lot of these things I remember going to the old Atomic Comics, I believe, and it was in the old location. Was it on Washington Street, I believe?
Yeah.
So I think I remember going there as a kid. Back then my parents would give me $10. Said pick whatever you want out of that. And for $10 in, the 90s, you could get a lot there.
Right.
But I feel like, there is a lot more things here than before, which is good because we need that. I've always felt like we were the perfect location where we're not far from DC, not far from Baltimore, but you're not paying those prices. And I think more folks, I want us to get some of that neighboring innovation from Frederick and Loudoun County, a lot of those higher paying jobs. I want them to look at us as well. I hope that the economic development team can do a little bit more of that. Loudoun County is the richest county in the United States and it borders Washington County to the south of us.
Right.
I'm not sure why we can't get some of that to flow over to our county and things like that. So, yeah, I think we have a lot of great things happening down the road. They're coming right now. So I definitely feel like we're changing for the better. I think that. But there's things we still have to address, with the day-to-day things going on in the city.
Do you have any particular strategies for any of those things that you would like to see change? For instance, the higher paying jobs or, a better, I guess, overall sense of, the residents feeling like they're safe in the city and things like that, things that you hear very often. I'm sure you did when you were knocking on doors.
Yeah, well, the good thing is we did just recently hire the base pay for the police to go up, which is good because
Sure.
we have to compete with other jurisdictions like Montgomery, Frederick, which there's a lot more money in those counties. We're never going to be those counties, but we can make it more attractive and benefits here. Looking at better benefits to recruit and things like that. It's nationwide, not just Hagerstown, but
Right.
what we can do to kind of stand out with the pack. That's a big thing, hiring all the police to get up to where we need to be. And I think actually having ordinances, of course, they're not going to be the end all be all, but we have the camping ordinance. I feel like it's important that we need to enforce things. The residents that do pay the tax money to live here, they want to sit on a park bench without urine on it. They should be able to do that. I don't think that, if anything, that should be a controversial thing. If you're on public property, get off. I'm sorry, but you can't leave it to the residents here to continuously, you're pooping on us. And that's kind of what I've gotten from this election. I want to help people that have mental health and addiction issues, and there's already resources to help them. But at the end of the day, we've got to look out for the residents that, do pay our paycheck. And that's what I'm concerned about. So, and I think more ordinances, better cooperation with federal and state too. I'm very concerned about some of the legislation coming out of Annapolis, juvenile justice reform. That's a big thing. I don't like the fact that kids can break into my car and they can get away in Maryland, and they've had some crazy bills come up in Annapolis that I plan to testify against that I think are going to hurt our city. We just have to take that fight to the local level, I believe. And I think once people are more aware of that, they're going to wake up and
Right.
they're going to like, oh, this is crazy. Why are you guys even thinking about this? We have a budget deficit in Annapolis. The governor said the state is coming up. But, I think right now we're in a time with inflation and everything, and folks are saying, hey, if, I have to live within my means at the grocery store, why can't government? And we have to get back to that. Like, I don't support raising fees, or I don't support making things any harder for anybody. And I think it's really back to the basics. What is it that we're providing for our residents here, and we don't have to make it fancy, but just they feel safe, they can open a business here, we can make it easy, and we can attract folks here. That's all we really need. So,
And downtown has really been the focus for Hagerstown for a number of years. And there is still discussion within the community outside of downtown. Why does downtown get all of the attention? Does downtown truly get all of the attention, or is that a misperception in your eyes?
that's a good question. I think that downtown gets a lot of focus, but I feel like there's other growth in other areas. Like I'm on the planning commission, so we do see new neighborhoods that want to come and build in the city limits. We have pre-annexation agreement. And that can be a dirty word, but a lot of that was done years ago before any of us even got elected.
Right.
So we have to grow our income tax base. We can only be so big. There's only so much land in the county. So no, I feel like downtown gets a lot of attention, but we have other parts within the city limits we could certainly look at. I was talking about data centers for a while, and people can say that's a dirty word, but if you plan it smart, like we have some old warehouses and abandoned buildings, I get it. We need the infrastructure like the fiber optics cable. We need things like that, but we do have infrastructure there where we could build it. So, I mean, there's plenty of cities that are flipping and changing. I mean, my aunt and uncle bought their hair salon in DC for less than 200, and it's worth over $1 million since they put a Whole Foods across the street. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're never going to be like DC, but there's a lot of potential here that has been yet to tap into. And there's a lot of great, I would encourage a lot of the residents watching this, if you haven't been, check the planning commission and come to our meetings. You'll see what, we're going to look at what's getting zoned and things there. And there's a lot of great things a lot of great businesses that want to come here. So,
What's your sense of how this body is going to function as a unit over the course of the next 4 years? I know it's only been a small sample size at this point, but what are you encouraged about?
well, I'm glad we have a new mayor with a new sense of direction. He shares the urgency that I have for the city, for the things we have. I do feel like the folks in Hagerstown voted for change because we have 3 new council members and a new mayor. So, any of the day, people wanted that. They want to see some concrete change. I would like to see planning code. We can streamline that better and make it easier for businesses and people like that here. Public safety is a huge thing. I would love to see more community policing. I feel like right now our strategies, we're putting out fires, and I get it because of manpower and other things, but we need to be a little more proactive on things like that. And I am hopeful this administration will look at things differently than the last administration. There were some things they did previously I wasn't too much of a fan of, and neither were the residents, because I brought it to them. I brought it to them and said, hey, how do you feel about this issue? And they're very passionate one way or the other, but also making sure their concerns are met and that they're not being ignored, because that was a big thing. I've talked to a lot of people, and they weren't blaming a particular party or person. They just said, we kind of wish they would agree with us and talk to us a little bit more. So I think, I've talked to, the last meeting or so, we talked about having some of our city council meetings in different sections of the
Yes.
city. Like, I think we should go almost like a neighborhoods first, where it's a town hall where we come to them. They don't always come to us, because I feel like sometimes they might need more than 1 month in open comments to vent.
Right.
And I feel like if they have that opportunity more and there's a better line of communication, then, people won't be as upset as they are about certain things. So,
And did you feel like what transpired at the last regular session with the citizen comments is maybe a harbinger of what's to come? I mean, more
yeah,
people
it was
coming?
great. I mean, I'm going to hear what everybody says, whether I agree with them or not. They have every right to say that, and I felt like the locomotive 202, we want to, I want to do my best to keep it here, but not break the bank for the city, because we can't be on the line for things we can't afford. We have so many other things to plan for. But yeah, that was a great meeting. I definitely feel like communication is key. And if you respond to emails, if you're doing things, and I'm not saying we're always going to have it 100% perfect, but I feel like if you're kind of proactive on that, you're not going to have a lot of angry residents. So, my disappointment was running neighborhoods first. I've emailed much of the leadership here before to come to our neighborhood meetings, and I never got a response. So I'm definitely not taking that approach now that I'm on the council. And, and I think it's always important to hear what people have to say, even if you don't like it. So,
And do you think that's why overall the Neighborhoods First program has sort of floundered a bit? Because they, in your words, that they just haven't heard what they wanted to hear from the people who could affect some change for them.
well, that too, I agree with that, because I've tried to get them to come to our previous, neighborhoods. We've had a few that did come from this body, but the rest didn't even respond to the email. So I think communication is clear. And, I definitely like to have our neighborhoods meetings. I like to get to know my neighborhood. I like to know what the issues are. We did a neighborhood cleanup at Pangbourne Park. We had hot dogs. We did all that stuff. Each neighborhood gets a certain amount of money. I think each neighborhood's different. Some are really active, some are not. I think it's important to have a more active community. More folks are aware of their surroundings. And so, you know, I know the Nextdoor app's a big neighborhood app. I get messaged a million times on about this or that, like we talked today about the abandoned vehicles and,
Yeah.
you know, they'll say so. And I try not to get into the neighborhood fighting, but, you know, I do, if they have a legitimate concern about something, I definitely want to look into that too. So, but, yeah, I feel like communication's key. I think this administration is going to look more hearing about, you know, and I know we have so many issues every month I hear, and it's hard to solve all of them in a quick way, but, and I never promised anybody the moment I got elected, I'm going to be Jesus and fix everything. But, you know, I do
You're not gonna
promise-
be walking on water or
Exactly.
anything like
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I do want to, you know, but I do want to hear your concerns, do my best, what in my power I
Sure.
can do to make things, because I think we all want the residents here to have a better quality of life. I think you're paying taxes here, you expect that, you know, and we want folks to stay here, we want folks to move here.
Right.
And that's our job as officials, you know, making sure they can stay happy and that we're doing all we can do to provide for the needs for them too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we'll end on this. So since you've become a council member, how has your life changed?
Well, time management, I realize, you know, I have a busy job, but just more time management, being more conscious towards that, just being, you know, more well aware of I don't have as much time, but also it's a rewarding opportunity to talk to new people, hear what's going on in town, you know, and get to know everybody else, because I'm neighbors with everybody else here, get to know your neighbors and
Yeah.
hear some exciting and new different things that you wouldn't think before. So I think that's all rewarding in itself. And, you know, I got to know a lot of folks by door knocking at their house last year, campaigning, and, you know, and I've kept in touch with a lot of them and they'll send me emails still. So I got to meet a lot of neat people that way too.
Well, congratulations on being elected to the new body here, and best of luck going forward. And certainly look forward to talking to you over the course of the next 4 years.
Appreciate that. So.
That's Councilmember Sean Flaherty, and I thank him for taking his time here this evening. Thank you for watching, and look forward to seeing you next time. For now, that's a wrap. We'll see you next time on Council Wrap.